This is the Sideline Slice, presented by Valentino's Pizza, the official pizza of the Huskers. Here's your host, Jessica Coody, and Husker Radio Network analyst, Jeremiah Sirles.
Welcome into a bye-week edition of the Sideline Slice. Huskers 5-1 going into the bye week alongside Jeremiah Sirles. I'm Jessica Coody. Sirles, how much better is it to go into a bye week with the win as opposed to a loss?
Oh, it cannot be stated enough of how wonderful it is going into a bye with a good taste in your mouth. I mean, any person who's played anything competitive knows that if you lose a game, it just doesn't sit well with you. You can't wait to get back out on the court or the field or whatever it is and just try and flush that feeling and that taste of a loss out of your mouth. And then when you have to go into a bye week and sit in that and stew in that for multiple weeks, it's the worst. Versus you go into a win with the bye week, it allows for so much more of self-reflection, looking back on, okay, what have we done well? What do we need to improve on? But at least we won. Right? You can always fall back. Like, you're getting grilled in the meeting room about things you got to get better on. You're like, yeah, I absolutely have to improve on that. But, man, at least it didn't cost us a football game. At least we won. So it's just such a good morale going in and being above 500, only one loss, one blemish on the record. I mean, morale should be at an all-time high for the Huskers.
Is this about where you thought Nebraska would be?
No.
No?
I'm going to be very honest with you. I did not anticipate us having a chance to be 6-0, but to really be looking at 5-1. I mean, we're one overtime drive away from being 6-0, and going into the season, question marks at the quarterback position because he's a true freshman. Is he going to be great? Is he going to be average? Is he going to be somewhere in between? And to see the way that he's played and to see the way that this defense has clicked and everything going through, I was hoping we could get to the bye at 3 wins, maybe sneaking out 4 wins and looking at, okay, need a couple wins in October and November to get us to a bowl game. But to go into the bye week at 5-1, one game away from earning a bowl bid, I'll be the first to admit, I did not anticipate looking at this, but I am sure happy that it's happening.
I think a lot of people are as well. Well, let's dive into the win, 14-7, the Huskers have to grind it out. It was so windy. It was crazy during warm-ups. I don't think I've ever been a part of a windier game, and that's saying something because I grew up in Oklahoma and was at Oklahoma for a while, where the wind comes sweeping down the plains. And so it was just, you knew that it was going to play a factor, but for the defense to grind it out the way that they did, just overall, how did you take away, reflect on that win, the 14-7 win over Rutgers?
Yeah, first of all, Rutgers is a good football team.
Yeah.
They were undefeated. They played really good defense. They didn't turn the ball over. And so, sorry, Greg, I know you wanted your question of the week on our Pick'em segment to be no turnovers, but to get 2 turnovers from that defense against that Rutgers team cannot be overstated. That was huge reason why we won that football game. And so the defense picked up right where I'd hoped they'd pick up, and being aggressive, not allowing the quarterback to get comfortable, getting after Callie McManus, all those things. So I was extremely happy with the way that our defense performed. I was a little sad in the execution of our offense. I was hoping that we'd build off the second half of Purdue and walk out here and just bing, bang, boom, execute, everyone hitting on all cylinders. But it was kind of a little bit like I talked about last week on the pod, it just felt clunky. And I know that we couldn't throw the ball the way we wanted to with the wind and whatnot, and I feel like we are, as much as it pains me to say, a pass-first offense. But we have to continue to find the rhythm on offense, to not put so much strain on our defense, to give ourselves a chance to go get lead and put points on the board. And then obviously we got to still continue to figure out our kicking game.
You've talked a lot about that too, just and the importance of that in some of these games, just the field position. And it just seemed like the offense just had, they were backed up a lot, and so how does that affect just, what you want to do? We heard Coach Rule talk a little bit about that, and you got to work through it. But how do you work through it, first of all? But then how difficult is that when you're backed up there time and time again?
It's so hard. Being backed up is such a difficult situation, and you practice it every single week, but it's not something you want to do multiple times a game. You want to be backed up maybe once or twice, and the goal is always to get the first down. And I know that sounds simple, and everyone's going, well, yeah, obviously, Sirles, you got to get the first down. But when you're in that situation, you have to just focus one play at a time, and because the mistakes that can happen when you're backed up lead to critical errors. They lead to safeties. They lead to sack fumbles and those type of things. So everything's got to be more buttoned up and polished. So you just really want to try and get that first down, get some flow going. And again, we just never really got going where we could get that first down and then get the second and then get back and flip the field. You know, it always felt like it was kind of an adventure. And when you're living in that as an offense, it's just hard because you feel like you have no rhythm. You feel like things are stacking up against you, and then you look up the scoreboard going, man, we're still in this game. Like, it feels like, it almost felt like on times on offense, like, man, are we winning this game? Like, it just felt like that angst, that anxiety, a little bit of what we felt last year, and I didn't love that coming out of the offense. But it is also a testament to the offense that they didn't let that panic, they didn't let that rattle, and we didn't have that disastrous error when we're backed up in the shadow of our own goal line.
You know, Coach Rule wasn't as critical of Dylan Raiola as maybe the outside media were. You know, just it wasn't his cleanest game. It wasn't his prettiest game that he played. But and I think even on the sideline, you know, I could just see a little bit more frustration than you normally see from Dylan. He did throw the interception there too. But what will he learn? I guess he's such a student of the game and dives into the film. What will he take away from that performance? What will be the biggest things that he will learn from?
Yeah, I think the number one thing that I'm employing him to learn is when things aren't going great, you don't have to put the Superman cape on. You don't have to think, okay, I'm the only one that can lead us out of this funk. I got to put it all on my shoulders as the 18-year-old that's been here since January, and I have to be the one that gets us out of this thing. You've got playmakers. You've got a bunch of people around you. It's okay to dish the ball out and take the 8-yard gain, even though you feel like you might be able to stick it into that crosser that's the 20-yard over the top. Get the ball out of your hands, get into the playmaker's hands, and don't feel like you have to force things. Don't back up out of the pocket and try and spin out and play an NCAA video game because this is real-life football, and that's really hard to protect as a tackle when you're 12 yards deep. Climb the pocket, scramble for 2 or 3 yards, go down, live to fight another day, and that's just stuff that comes with experience. That's just things that you can't do in practice. You can't do it unless you're just out there on Saturdays living it. And that comes with the growing pains of having a young quarterback. And to have him have a game like he did and to still get out with a win, it's so refreshing because he didn't completely implode. I've seen young quarterbacks that have struggle games like that throw multiple interceptions, right? The first one leads to 2, the 2 leads to 3. And he did a nice job of taking care of the football and not trying to force it too much when he felt like he might have needed to. But I think he's going to learn a lot from this game of just understanding how to rely more on the people around him and not feeling like he has to do everything. Coach
Rule was asked at the press conference, he was asked about getting Heinrich Haarberg more involved, and that's been something I think we heard quite a bit on Big Red Reaction. I know it's been something that people want to know, seeing that we've seen a couple of plays with Heinrich involved. But he said, yeah, you know, he should play more, but also we've got a lot of playmakers that I'm sitting here saying we got to get Thomas Fidone the ball more. We got to get Carter Nelson the ball more. What's the challenge for an offense when you have that many playmakers and you want to make sure that you're spreading the ball around, but then you have these other guys that, we got to figure out a way to get him in too?
I go back and forth on the Haarberg thing because I get it. He's a phenomenal athlete. We want to make sure we're trying to get him the ball when we can. But he's also the backup quarterback.
Right.
Right? Like, it's like, if he goes out there and he's playing tight end and he gets just crushed over the middle, and now you're sitting there going, oh, shoot, he's our backup quarterback. Now we have to be more careful with Dylan, and we got to make sure we do this, that, and the other thing. So I totally get the Satterfield and the rule of wanting to involve a great playmaker and a great athlete like Haarberg, but also having to protect the team's best interest. The team's best interest is having a quarterback that can go in if all of a sudden Dylan Raiola hits his hand on a helmet or his shoe falls off or whatever it is. You have to have confidence in the backup quarterback that can go in and can win you football games. And Coach Rule's right. He's not going to just come in and fix all of the issues. We have the playmakers for the first time in probably 5 years that I really feel like, okay, 18's covered, where's 4? Okay, 4 is covered, where's 24? Okay, where's Carter Nelson? Where's all these guys? Where's
Corey Barney?
Ramir Johnson, right?
Jalen Lloyd.
Where's Barney? There's Jalen Lloyd. Where's Dowdell coming out of the backfield? Ramir Johnson coming out of the backfield? Emmett Johnson coming out of the backfield? It's not a lack of weapons. It goes back to what I said. It's a lack of execution. the call is the call. Satterfield's going to put the call in, and whether it's a pass, a run, an RPO, whatever it is, it's up to the 11 guys on the field to execute and go 11 for 11, because all it takes is one guy, 1/11th, to not do his job, and the play is totally foobarred completely. And if you have one guy missing here and one guy missing there and a missed assignment here, a missed assignment there, it can make it look like everyone on the offense is playing poorly. And I think that was a little bit of what happened last week, is it wasn't just one guy that was like, oh, this dude's wrecking the game for us or whatever it might be. Everyone took their turn of having their play not allow the play to execute properly. And so Rule's right. We have plenty of playmakers. It's just about on a consistent basis going out there and executing, going 11 for 11 on every single play.
You know, another thing that he's brought up, too, is just the run game and, you know, wanting to average around, I think, 180 yards a game. But that he has kind of said more so the issue of not being able to break off those bigger runs. And, you know, even with the Jalen Lloyd, after the fake punt and Buschini gets it to Lloyd, he gets ankle tackled, you know, just stuff like that just get tripped up maybe by one guy. How does that change to where you are getting by that one guy and able to execute that big home run play?
Yeah, so much of it is when you're lacking what he's referring to as explosive plays, right? An explosive play, we had different metrics for it when I played in the league. Some teams it was 12-plus yards, other teams it was 18-plus yards. And, you know, that's really the only way you're going to get to that obtainable 180 to 200-yard rushing games, is you have to have some explosive rushes. The problem is when you don't have a bunch of them, people start getting a little anxious, and by I mean the ball carriers, and start feeling like they need to force it, right? Like, I got to bounce this one to get that explosive play, and oh crap, there's the unblocked corner making the tackle for 2 yards. Instead of just trusting it, and Satterfield trusting it of, hey, this play is going to be a 1 to 2 to 3 yard run in the first quarter, but if we just keep leaning on it and leaning on it and leaning on it, eventually that defense is going to get tired. Eventually that defense is going to make a mistake. And if the running back just continues within the scheme, that's how you break the one ankle tackle, and then you're off to the races. And I know it's not sexy to say and it's not fun to do, but you don't scheme explosive plays. You really don't. Like, you have the fun gimmicks every now and then with the double reverses, or, you know, the spit it out and the throwbacks or whatever it might be. But the great teams that have the explosive plays are the ones that play within the scheme and just allow the big play to happen over the course of the game instead of trying to force it when maybe it's not the right time.
Is that a running back situation? Like, are the holes being there? Are the holes being opened by the offensive line?
Yes and no. It goes back to my previous point that, you know, at times there's holes, but then there's times that one guy's sliding off on the linebacker and missing him. Or all of a sudden one guy's splitting our double team, and so there's a guy sitting in the hole. And it just goes back to a great run game means great execution by everyone involved in the blocking scheme, all the way out to the receivers. The number one metric for explosive plays is receivers blocking, is receivers doing the dirty work of trying to go in there and dig out a box safety, or push cracking on a safety and leaving the corner there as the one unblocked man to let the running back miss, because historically corners aren't the best tacklers. But if a receiver's kind of lackadaisical getting in there, or not fully committing and getting in there and digging out those guys, those were the safeties sitting there in the hole at 6 yards, and now you no longer have the explosive run. It's a 6-yard gain. And so it just goes back to, yes, sometimes the holes are there, and I feel like there's a couple run reads that some of the guys missed. But I would say from a consistent play-by-play basis, we have to be better executing the called runs so that Satterfield has more confidence in calling the runs. Because I played with a lot of offensive coordinators, and nothing will scare an offensive coordinator out of the run game than negative runs early. Nothing. The whole game plan can get thrown out the window because the quarterback and the offensive coordinator are sitting there going all week long, we're going to run the ball, we're going to run the ball, we're going to run the ball. And then his first 3 called runs are for 1 yard, 2 yard, -1. We can't run the football, right? They just panic. Every offensive coordinator in the world panics when it comes to that. You know, no one's immune to it at any level, NFL, college, high school. And so much comes to, hey, offensive line and Coach Raiola saying, hey, guys, we have to give Satterfield and we have to give these running backs confidence early in the game that we can open the holes, we can show what we can do so that they can continue to give us called runs. We don't have to live in a drop back situation.
Overall, how do you feel like the O-line is playing, especially given the shuffling that has had to take place?
Yeah, I think Gunner's been a bright spot. I think he had a few freshman moments this past weekend in pass protection, stopping his feet, throwing his hands, lunging a little bit. It was nice to see Micah back out there.
It was against a team like Rutgers, which is a solid defense, right?
Solid defense, but we got a lot better defenses coming down the pipe. But it was nice to see Micah back out there on some heavy sets. I think he was the extra tight end that came in a few times. Would love to see him work himself back into the rotation. Nothing against Henry, nothing against Evan, but I do think he is just a more talented player than both of those players. I do think that, you line all three of those players up and you say, which one's the NFL body? Oh, that one, the big one, right? So I would love to see him get back out on the offensive line. I think he can really help in the run game going through there. But again, Lutovsky and Evan have done a nice job stepping up in there. Bryce Benhart still playing really solid football on that front, and then Ben Scott's been a great anchor in the middle. So I think they're playing above average, but I still think there's a lot left on the table for that group.
But you can appreciate the approach of Coach Rule and backing Henry, and he's our starter, and Mike is a backup for us now, and Mike has got to do things right. And with the culture that's being set in place, you got to take care of business. And if one is not doing that just because you're the best guy for the whatever talent-wise, you're not going to put it out there. You got to appreciate that he's not going to just go away from everything that he's tried to establish everywhere he's been.
Yes, I completely agree with the culture and the tone setting and making sure that if you're not put together and buttoned up off the field, you won't get a chance to perform on the field. But I also know that he can help this football team win. And so I'm kind of in this, I'm in this tug of war with myself going, Micah, come on, buddy, figure it out. We need you out there, buddy. But I also can absolutely 100% respect Coach Rule and Coach Raiola going, no, this is the standard. The standard doesn't change. It doesn't matter if you're all world, all conference. If you don't uphold the standard that we have put in place, you will not play on Saturdays. But I really hope that Micah took that as a wake-up call, or whatever the issue was going on, they got it figured out, because I do really think he can help this run game, especially getting back out there in the middle.
Valentino's, treasured Italian family recipes passed down for generations. Valentino's has become Nebraska's classic Italian tradition and proudly served in Memorial Stadium for over 30 years.
All right, well, how about the Blackshirts? How fired up were you to see that performance out of the defense?
My favorite play from the entire thing was when Ty Robinson decided to steamroll Callie McManus for thinking he could block him. That was a bad business decision, buddy. Sometimes you got to make the business decision, and seeing Ty Robinson rolling full speed downhill and thinking I'll throw my body in the way was a bad business decision. And that defense is clicking. I mean, Williams, the performance that he had with the multiple sacks and being disruptive, and Elijah Judy getting involved on some run stuffing plays, and then Bullock can just not be talked about enough as the heartbeat of this interior linebacker core, and being a playmaker and being all over the field and hawking the ball down and doing all those things. I'm just so thrilled with the level at which all 11 guys are playing on the field with. And it's not just the same 11 guys. It's tons of guys rotating in and out. And all 11, when they step onto that field, know that they're earning that black shirt. They're earning those moments. And it's really fun to watch our defense play.
You brought this up last week of the podcast, and then Terrence Knighton was on the show last week, and he also said this, that Nash's stats might not tell the whole story, that he's getting triple teamed a lot of times. And the play, if you are having a all-conference type of performance from a middle linebacker, a lot of times that's because you have a really good nose guard. Mm-hmm. Just from your perspective, from an offensive line, when you've got a guy like Nash, how does that make it a nightmare for the offense to try to stop a guy like John Bullock?
Yeah, it's the same premise of, if you have an all-pro running back, you probably have a pretty dang good offensive line, right? If you've got a guy that's playing and making tackles all over the field as a linebacker, you've got a really good supporting cast of guys up front. I mean, so many times the running game, especially the interior running game, you're reliant upon movement of the down linemen. Every offensive line coach says the same thing. Move the downs into the linebacker's lap, right? Move the downs into the linebacker's lap. If you're getting the downs stuck at the line of scrimmage, the linebacker's free running. He's going wherever he wants to go without anything, or it's a glancing blow because the two linemen are stuck right there on the big polar bear, and now Bullock's going, okay, do I want to go in that A gap or that B gap, or okay, yeah, I'll just pull my trigger and go make a tackle in the backfield. It's so hard And it's frustrating as an offensive lineman to come off on the sideline and the O-line coach is looking at the picture like, why didn't anyone get the linebacker? And you're like, I couldn't move the Volkswagen Beetle over the center, coach. I'm sorry. Like, it's a frustrating thing for an offensive line to week in and week out watch the tape and go all week long, we got to move the downs. We got to move the downs. We got to move the downs. And then you get to the game and be like, I can't move the downs, right? Like, it's a frustrating thing. And so those two guys cannot be talked about enough in the middle, and Ty and Nash, and just the dirty work that they do on a play in and play out basis.
How did you love the approach from Tony White to change things up, to change up the front, put some bigger bodies, some more big bodies out there?
Riley Van Poppel, baby. Welcome to the party. I mean, he looks big.
Yeah.
I mean, compared to what I saw last year when he was young to what I saw now, it's like, I get it. I get why they want to redshirt you. I fully understand it, because you are going to be the Nash and the Ty next year that's doing all these things. But it was great to see him back in there and stuffing some guys, because you knew that Rutgers wanted to run the football. Very talented running back, and he made some plays. But I love the way that Tony White was like, okay, we've struggled at some pieces of this with the downhill running stuff against Illinois. Let's throw an extra D lineman in there and see what happened. Oh, it worked. I mean, you and I text you on the side all the time during the games like, I miss Riley Van Poppel, right? And so seeing him get a chance out there, seeing the bigger front, we're going to need a lot more of that stuff going into Big Ten play, because as we head into the teeth here, you start looking at USC, UCLA, Wisconsin, Iowa. Like, all those teams are going to want to run the football. And so we have to make sure we have an answer from that from a personnel standpoint on the defensive side.
How about the goal line stand? I mean, I asked Ty Robinson about it. He used some choice words that we had to edit out of the post-game interview, but they were just not going to be denied. They were running out there. You got a block punt that goes down at the 2. Shout out Nate Borkager for not giving up a touchdown, but then that defense runs out. They were... We don't care. We don't care. We're going out there to stop this team from scoring.
Yeah, I mean, that's just an attitude that starts from the top down. That's what Tony White's attitude is. That's what Coach Rule's attitude is no matter what, doesn't matter the circumstance, the standard is the standard. Doesn't matter if they're starting on our 2, their 2, regardless, we're going to play this style of defense. And the way they were flying around, the way they were disrupting, getting into the backfield, tackling better. I thought our tackling was much better this game than it was against Illinois. And you can't have goal line stands like that unless you have disruption and penetration on the up front. And, man, they were living in the backfield on that series.
How frustrating is that for an offense when you got 6 tries at it and you can't get it into the end zone?
That is not a fun film session on Sunday. Let me tell you what. They're going to sit there and you're going to be – that's one of those where you're sitting in your chair, you're kind of back like this, you got your hand over your mouth, and you're like, it's coming. It's coming. And then all of a sudden it pops up and you're like, oh, gosh, and you sink down a little lower in the chair. And they're like, all right, boys, let's go ahead and talk about what happened here. And you're like, let's not. Let's just move on from this, because, man, when you get 6 shots down there and you don't stick it in the end zone, there is some hell to be paid on Sunday morning, my friends.
You know, they had talked a lot about just the preparation and how they practiced. I mean, it was a hard week of practice. They were very physical. And then Coach Rule said he felt like that translated. How does that? How does it feel different when you go through a week where you are going so hard that it, to me, you would think, you know, from the outside looking in, oh, you go so hard so you don't have anything left in the gas on Saturday. But how does that translate to Saturdays when you are being really physical throughout the week in practice?
You know, it's funny you mentioned that, because as a player, there's nothing worse than when your coach after the game's like, that's why we practiced so hard all week, and so we played that hard, because you're going, damn it. That means we're going to have to practice really hard every week. Like, it's going to be so physical every single day. But it works. It is. And it's such a mind, I'm not going to use the bad word, it's such a mind mess when your coach is telling you, like, we have to practice hard. We have to practice physical. You got to practice like you play. Because in the back, you're like, I got a game on Saturday. But when you practice hard and you practice physical and you show up to the game and you're like, this is it? This is all you guys got? Wednesday was harder than this,
Yeah.
right? Like Wednesday and Thursday were way tougher than this. I get why we practice like this, because when the games become easy and from a physical standpoint, you're like, it's way harder to try and move Nash and Ty than it is to move you. You get a swagger and a confidence about yourself that we are the better football team, because I know the defense I played against all week, and they're going to kick the crap out of your offense because I know that we played against them during the week, so I'm going to kick the crap out of you. It really is a mind game when it comes to some of that stuff, but it is really hard as a player to know that every week you're like, well, it worked this week, so guess more of it next week.
I'm saving the best for last for you. Boomshini, Brian Buschini. I mean, that guy gets rocked in his first time running out there. He's hurt. I really didn't think he's going to go, but then he battles through it. You were saying he's in your running for your overall midseason MVP.
Yes, 100%. I mean, that dude is just an absolute weapon. You talk about field position and flipping the field and what it means in games in November, and you're playing against Iowa and you're playing against Wisconsin and teams that you want to make have to go the distance, and offense is sputtering a little bit, and so you don't want your defense to give up a short field, and you can put a guy out there that can just drop it in the bucket inside the 5-yard line like he's hitting a 60-degree lob wedge. Put some spin on it and just bounce and come right back at you. I mean, that dude is just such a weapon from a punter standpoint, and you always love when your kicker's a little tough. Right? You know me. I'm not a huge fan of kickers. Never have been. Probably never will be. But when you have a kicker, a punter that's lighting dudes up on tackles, right? Like going down there and putting his face in guys and and then you're watching a guy limp out there going, don't worry, boys, I'm not going anywhere. I'm battling right here with you. You earn a lot of respect from your teammates from a toughness standpoint when it comes to that, because again, kickers, punters are not known for being tough guys. But when you see a guy like that going out there and continuing to deliver with a back that you can tell is just murdering him, you earn a lot of brownie points from the rest of your team.
And then he's dropping dimes, you know?
Yeah, and then you go out there and pull out your best Dylan Raiola and just drop an absolute dime in the bucket there. I mean, that dude, like I said, you asked me before the show, like, hey, what do you think about MVPs? I was like, Brian Buschini. The guy can do it all.
He is getting the crowd like have the boo, and Camden was telling me they got something to go in the student section. How about a punter getting like chants, like a Sue? We hear Ndamukong Suh runs out of the tunnel and we hear the Sues, and now you're hearing Buschini with Brian Buschini. How about a punter getting adorned with that kind of reception from the crowd?
Yeah, it just shows that Nebraska fans, we know football, and we know that Big Ten is so reliant. I mean, Iowa's MVP of the last 2 years was their punter, right? I mean, and everyone loved him there. And so having a punter like that can be a weapon and pin guys deep, it can't be overstated how much we're going to need him going through. We have to clean up the protection standpoint. And I wanted to bring this up. I know everyone's going, oh, okay, we got a punt blocked. But once you get a punt blocked, and we've now had, I think, 3 punts blocked this year, it's blood in the water.
I think 4.
Is it 4?
No.
It might be. I think it's
no,
3.
because then we had the field goal. So sorry, it was.
Yeah. That's a whole other can of worms.
Yeah.
But when you allow kicks to be blocked, you allow blood in the water, and when there's blood in the water, the sharks will circle. And so every single special teams coordinator that we now go up against is going to test our protection unit. They're going to test, did they get this fixed? And if we don't get this fixed, it's going to be a problem the rest of the year. We have to put on tape that we have shored up our protection. They're not going to block any more punts. They're not going to block any more kicks, because we don't want it to be an adventure every time our special teams goes out there to either flip the field or score points.
And, there have been issues with the snaps, but it sounded like a couple of those were not all on the snaps, that it was, even Isaac Gifford missed something too in the protection of it.
Yeah, and a lot can be pointed at the snapper, especially for the field goal issues that we've been having. The one against CU was a slow snap, but this game, I think both blocks were lapses in protection, just lapses in mental errors, missed assignments, and that stuff's inexcusable. You can't have that. That's not a winning recipe. And I know Coach Rule and the special teams coordinator are going to meet long and hard over the bye week about that, and that's going to be a major point of emphasis coming out of the bye.
How do you, I think I've asked you this last week, but some of that, how do you fix it? How do you fix it, like at this point in the season?
It's,
Is it fixable?
From a personnel standpoint, you can't. right? This isn't the NFL. This isn't like, cut him, find someone else, right? Like that. And that's the world I'm so used to living in, where it's like, why can't we just cut this snapper and find someone else? No, this is college. This is development, right? That's your job as a coach, is to develop, to teach, to make those guys better. And so you really want to lean on your support staff here. It's why I'm glad guys like Brett Maher are on the staff, guy that played in the league, had some struggles in the league, can help these guys understand the mental that it goes in and out. And then really it's just about every single person knowing, hey, if we have some issues with the operation and I'm on the protection unit, I got to step my game up. I can't be the reason a punt gets blocked, because we already have enough stuff going on that we're trying to work through as a special teams unit. So it's up to the other 9 guys besides the snapper and the punter, or the snapper holder kicker, to just say, you know what, I'm going to buckle down a little bit harder. I'm going to study a little bit more. I'm going to stay after practice and get my kick slides on my punt steps just a little bit better so I can hold up in protection if they want to come after this thing. And then just continuing to develop on that, because it is not just a quick, easy fix. It's a grind. And you have to be able to adapt during the season. It's adapt or die time right now for our special teams.
So besides special teams, what are some of the things that you think this team is tackling, really focusing on here during this bye week before getting a couple days off and then heading into Indiana?
Yeah, first thing is just getting healthy. I think everyone this time of year, the body hurts. You've got bumps and bruises. No one's 100%. So making sure you're doing the right things in the bye week here, whether it's getting in the cold tub, getting massages, acupuncture, using the treatment, whatever it might be to get your body back. But, some points of emphasis from the defensive side of the ball initially is going to be our tackling. Like I said, I thought it was better against Rutgers, but it has reared its head a few times, especially against Illinois and Northern Iowa, a little bit of just poor tackling as a whole. So I think that's going to be a point of emphasis. And then on the offensive side, just continuing to find an identity in the run game. What are we? What do we want to be? What do we want to continue to roll with? And just giving Satterfield confidence to call those runs. And that comes back to the offensive line, the tight ends, the fullbacks, whoever's involved in the receivers, whoever's involved in the blocking scheme, just going, hey, we have to be able to run the football. It's great to have Dylan. It's great to have these playmakers and be able to air it out over the field, but we have to be able to run the football to close out games, and we have a lead, especially in the fourth quarter. So we have to continue to sharpen that tool.
All right. Greg and I are going to do this on Sports Nightly, so we wanted to get you in on the action. Mid-season MVPs for the offense and the defense, who would you go with? We had already talked about, you said Brian Buschini was in your
there's
consideration.
No one even close on the special team side besides Brian Buschini. He's a distant first. Offensively, you got to give it to Dylan. You have to give it to Dylan, a kid that came in, wasn't sure what we were going to get out of him, and has just had one of the highest completion percentages in all the FBS. Really, the first 2 interceptions were not on him. I felt like he felt through his first true interception this week, and has just delivered time and time again, converted with his legs, made some special things happen, and given this offense a life that it did not have last year at all. So Dylan's my MVP on offense, and then on defense is going to be Bullock. Bullock has been a guy that has intercepted the football. He's sacked the quarterback. He's stood up linemen. He's stood up running backs in the hole. He is everything you want in a middle linebacker. He is the heartbeat of this defense, and I love the fact that he is the story of where he came from, how he's come to, the journey of which he's come. He is my number 1 MVP on this Blackshirt defense.
And there's lots to choose from there. There's multiple you can choose from.
Oof. Yeah, there's a lot there. It's not like special teams. It's not like, that guy. Right, there's a lot of different guys that have contributed in a lot of different ways. I mean, you could talk about some of the guys that have come in for injuries.
Yeah.
Right, guys that have had to step up that weren't starters at the beginning of the year. Tommy Hill goes down, and all of a sudden you're like, hey, you got to go in there. And all of a sudden he's the highest graded PFF corner of the week. Right, like those type of things are great to see, and it's a testament to Coach Rule and Tony White and Satterfield of how they built the depth on this roster, not just the starters.
Okay, before I let you go, you got a big weekend ahead and some great news for a former Husker.
Yeah, so I'm headed to New York this weekend. The wife and I are going to go out there. We've got Giants-Bengals playing, so I've got a client on both those teams, Sunday Night Football in the Meadowlands, so I'm going to go there. Adrian Martinez actually got elevated from the practice squad to the active roster for last week's game, and with Aaron Rodgers getting dinged in last week's game, and R.I.P. Aaron Rodgers, he looks terrible. I think that he's going to get elevated again this week, and so going to go watch him play my old squad, the Bills, on Monday Night Football in the Meadowlands. So I get to go out and watch some fun NFL football. It happens to fall on a perfect weekend when the Huskers aren't playing, so yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun out on the East Coast this weekend.
And some good college games this weekend, too.
Listen, Emma's friend has a wedding on
Oh.
Saturday. And it's maybe the best slate of college football games the entire year. So I've already told her I will have my phone. I may even have an iPad, but I am not missing this slate of college football games.
Awesome. Well, great stuff. Enjoy the weekend, and we'll be back next weekend. We're going to preview a game that's going to be on Big Noon Fox. It's going to be the primetime game for Fox in Nebraska going to Indiana. Very well could be the Big Noon kickoff. Pregame show be there, but undefeated Indiana, who would have thought at this point? But big matchup the next time we circle back. We'll be previewing for the Huskers.
Absolutely. I mean, looking forward to it. This is the point of the year where every game becomes that much more important. Every game means that much more, and that's where you grind so hard in the offseason, the beginning part of this year, to make sure that those games have that type of meaning to them week in and week out.
He's Jeremiah Sirles. I'm Jessica Coody, and as always, this has been the Sideline Slice presented by Valentino's Pizza, the official pizza of the Huskers.
Go Big Red.
Valentino's, a slice of home you just can't get anywhere else. What started with a treasured family recipe has become a Nebraska tradition for over 65 years. Proud to be the official pizza of the Huskers.